a new rule in the NBA that a lot of people just do not care for, a 65-game rule. For those who are unaware, this is the first season. You have to play 65 games to make sure that you fit the requirement to make sure you can win these awards at the end of the season, MVP, DPOY, but this also spills into the All-NBA and All-Defensive Team selection as well. For those who do not know, when you get those type of awards, it also gives you incentives financially alongside the prestige of being named the MVP or best defender in the league. So a lot of people are trying to figure out, is this problematic? Because it's certainly concerning and bringing some real conversations to the forefront. Rachel Nichols had a take on this first, and a lot of other NBA players, ex and current, also had some conversations around it as well.
I would say that whether he is considered for MVP is kind of an individual decision. Every voter, every person out there who has an opinion on this has to calculate, would you rather have Joel Embiid, with the way he is playing this season, for 62 games?
This is the sassiest picture of Joel Embiid I have ever seen in my life. Just as a quick sidebar.
Or would you rather have your next most sort of qualified candidate for 74 games or whatever that guy has played? Sometimes the answer will be, I would rather have the best player for 60 games or even 55 games than someone else, like say a bench player or someone for 82 games. And then it's just a matter of like how you make that discussion go and like how close you get before you say, okay, I still want the guy with more games. But that is a factor in MVP. And to take that off the table is silly. To take the idea that he's not even going to be allowed to be on the ballot. If people want to penalize him for missing a bunch of games, let them do that. Give the opportunity for voters to do that. Don't just wipe away, as you say, the fact that he was even there this season in the way that he was.
Now, to Rachel Nichols, her point is valid. You don't want to take that away. However, the problem with what she's saying is that we've effectively been doing that all NBA history long. When people make this argument of like, oh, he didn't play 65 games, so he can't win MVP, that's such problematic. That's how the media has been voting since the beginning of time. That's how fans have been voting, or that's how players have been voting as well, back when they had the chance and opportunity to vote for MVP. When we go back throughout NBA history, right, and we go see all the players who won the MVP award, Karl Malone won it playing 49 games, but that was a shortened season. LeBron won it 62 games. That was a shortened season. Giannis won it 63 games, shortened season. Bob Cousy won it in 57, 64 games. That was also a shortened season. The only player who won it playing fewer than 65 games while not participating in a shortened season is Bill Walton. That's it. And even then, people question, should he have even won it while only playing 58 games? So this idea that like, this is now, we're getting into new territory, like, no. That's how people have already been voting on this award since the beginning of time. So the MVP conversation to me is inherently ridiculous. Last year, Embiid played 66 games, so he would have been fine as well. He would have been applicable in this. So that's fine, but that to me is irrelevant. That doesn't make any sense. However, the point that she's about to make next actually is a pretty sound one.
The fact that All-NBA is included in this is a little bit more of a mind blow because you have 15 players named to All-NBA teams. So now it's a conversation of, would you rather have Joel Embiid for, let's say, 62 games than the 15th guy on the All-NBA team for however many games he played? And that answer could be Joel Embiid, like very possibly. I think it's not just the league in general that has to take responsibility. I think the team owners need to take responsibility because, as you point out, all of this is not only approved of, but some cases recommended by the team with the overall goal of preserving their players until they get to the spring, because not only do the fans like playoff runs, the owners like playoff runs. It's a lot of extra money if you're in the playoffs. You got to clean up your own house if you're an owner. The league, they're not the only grown-ups in the room here. I mean, I think if team owners wanted to make it a priority for the stars to show up on the biggest nights, I think that has to start at home. If all of the owners did that, that's where this problem would change to me.
On that part, I kind of agree with what she's saying because we keep blaming the wrong people for like how we got to this point. Everybody keeps talking about like, oh, it's the players and oh, it's the league's responsibility. Like, no, the truth of the matter is like people don't want to admit this, but the owners have way more responsibility in this conversation than need be. So I think that's a fair point. And also the other fair point is the All-NBA conversation she presented as well. MVPs, DPOYs, like individual awards to that extent, to that level of prestige, like those have pretty consistently had an unwritten rule that you had to play a certain amount of games to win the award, right? Like that's already been instated, ingrained. Like nobody doesn't really care about that. But the All-NBA selections is interesting because I think it is a much more valid argument to be made that you probably would rather have Joel Embiid for 60-some games rather than the 15th best player for 70-some games, because that's how much better Joel Embiid is within that 10-game gap. So I do understand her there, but all in all, the MVP conversation, I just think it's no. However, Rachel Nicholson's not the only person who brought this to our attention. Draymond Green also had something to say about this as well.
Joel playing tonight felt very much so because of the 65-game limit, where I think is actually quite bullshit. Guys didn't face those rules before, but those same all-NBA teams, those same MVP awards lists, Defensive Player of the Year, those lists are the same. I once lost a Defensive Player of the Year award to Kawhi Leonard, and I think he played 51 games.
Let's fact check Draymond Green here because, you know, NBA players, they tend to embellish a lot because they're trying to get a point off. So let's just fact check him here. So we're going to go to DPOY, and then we'll just check. All right. So has there ever been a time where someone played 51 games, in particular Kawhi, and he won DPOY? There's 72 and there's 65. So no, Draymond, you just made that up. Kawhi was literally one game removed from also meeting the 65-game threshold. So, no, that's just not true. I think Rudy Gobert in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, Rudy Gobert in 2018 is the only player who won the DPOY while playing a significantly fewer amount of games. That's it. 65 games. Tyson Chandler won in 62, shortened season. Giannis, 63, shortened season. Triple J won it last year, also 63 games. And Kawhi, 64. And then Alonzo Mourning, 46. That was also a shortened season. But there's just 3 players in NBA history, 2 of which were right on the cusp of 65 games. They easily probably would have put themselves out there to play 65 games. It's not that big of a deal. And also, for those who don't know, the league does give them some type of appeal to say, hey, he's close enough to 65 games. He was dealing with real injuries. It just wasn't rest. Can we allow him to put him on the ballot for these awards? So, no, Draymond, it wasn't 51. It was 64. And if need be, there is an appeal to allow Kawhi Leonard, even in 2015, to put him in a DPOI conversation. However, the overarching point that he made where players are getting this benefit of the doubt because they get to play in an era where, hey, we have to deal with these certain rules and they didn't have to, and the rules don't change, or the way that the league history has been built hasn't changed. What he's saying is true. But sorry, Draymond, that's applicable throughout NBA history. There was a point in time where there were players who voted on the MVP, and certain players benefited from that ability for other players to vote on the MVP, such as Kareem winning MVP without making the playoffs. The media now changes that, and now they vote for MVP, and that's never happened again. Another great example is the All-Star selections. There was a point in time where if you was an All-Star and you was a center, regardless of how steep the competition was, you were able to get an All-Star selection. So now all of a sudden, you have a bunch of players like Yao Ming only playing like 10, 15 games in the regular season. He's receiving All-Star selections. Big Z receiving All-Star selections, right? And now those rules benefit those players. But here we are, fast forward in today's game, we changed that because we saw the flaw in that. We saw the flaw with Draymond, where front court players had a hard time battling with one another, in particular forwards, while centers were just walking into All-Star and All-NBA selections, because even though, yes, we used to have it set in place where the All-Star and All-NBA selections were broken down in guard, forward, centers, and so now you have a bunch of centers who don't belong, and there's a bunch of forwards that are being left out of the conversation, and so now we have it front court, back court. And crazy enough, Draymond, you benefit from that. You as a front court player now have more options to make the team, even though in previous eras you might not have ever made it, because if you're playing in an era where you have LeBron and KD and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and all these great forwards, it's harder for you to make All-NBA, All-Star selections and all defensive teams as well. But if we just collapse all that down and just say front court, back court, it actually makes it easier for you to be in there because you now get to compete against the field instead of just select forwards. And now the center selection is being given to Joakim Noah, who's making first team All-NBAs, or DeAndre Jordan, who's making first team or second team All-NBAs. And we all know that those players are not that good. We changed it now to where, we're going to go positionless when it comes comes to all NBA selections because we want to make sure we get an accurate depiction of the top 15 players. You will benefit from that. But back in the day, Patrick Ewing doesn't make an all NBA team or even all defensive teams because he has to compete with Shaq, Hakeem, David Robinson, Dikembe Mutombo, Alonzo Mourning. But we all knew that Patrick Ewing was one of the top 15 players in the NBA. So we just make adjustments and corrections as we go. We shouldn't continue to make the same faults just because we did it back 15, 20 years ago. It's a bad argument.
Freak played with him and JK diving for the ball, but maybe it's not as bad if the knee isn't already banged up. I don't really bang with it. And now we got one of our premier faces in this league, the MVP of our league, possibly hurt for an extended period of time.
See, here's the aspect that I will say about this. What he's saying, there's some validity behind it, but I think people just need to accept the fact that, in particular to a Joel Embiid, bro, that nigga's just not healthy. Like, we have to stop beating around the bush with this. He missed 2 or 3 games leading up to the Warriors game, and he still didn't look healthy. I don't know if it really matters about how many games he's played. He just don't look healthy. Like, Embiid was running around and just collapsed. Like, he just didn't even look healthy. So what he's saying is right. There's a lot of validity behind it. But the truth of the matter is, bro, like, these niggas, he's just not healthy. He's genuinely just not healthy. And that sincerely needs to be taken into consideration when having these conversations. And so, though, yes, it feels like we may be forcing Embiid out there, my brother, I don't even know if it really matters if Joel Embiid missed last night's game against the Warriors or not. The truth of the matter is, bro, he's just not where he needs to be, and that's very concerning. And to me, that's, like I stated in my last video, that's a much bigger problem. I don't necessarily know if the 65 game rule changes that. I don't think it changes that at all.
The only reason I would not take Joel Embiid
because his health.
is because of his health. It's the only reason.
The best ability is
the
what?
only reason. And I'm going to call out. I'm not calling out every NBA player. I'm not talking about anybody who's had legitimate injuries. I'm talking about the fact that we're living in a day and age where you see people sitting out games to prevent injuries. They're not injured. They're preventing themselves from getting injured by sitting out games. They're perfectly fine to go to an arena and play. They show up to the arena, they're dressed, 18, 19,000 people are in the arena, and you elect. I'm not talking about when the team forces you to. I'm not talking about because those scenarios happen. But you elect to sit out. Oh, you're not feeling 100%. You're not necessarily ready to go, et cetera, et cetera. Let me throw this by you, dog, because I have my researcher do some history here. Michael Jordan.
All right, he's about to just say a bunch of players because this is the thing that really bothers me. Like I told y'all before, when people sit here and talk like the way Stephen A. Smith just talked about, like, oh, you elect not to play and da-da-da-da-da, like, sure, we don't want that to happen, but if we're being honest with ourselves, how often does that happen? Because truth be told, we all thought that Embiid did that over the weekend on Saturday, and come to find out, he not only missed that game, but when he tried to play against the Warriors, he still wasn't healthy. Majority of the players that we are questioning about their availability is really just Kawhi and Embiid. Those niggas might just not be 100% healthy, bro. Like, they might just have degenerate knees. They might not be available and have the ability to play a significant amount of time. That just might be the reality of them. But when LeBron misses games, bro, like, nah, he's old, so let's be clear. But when LeBron was missing games, normally he was injured. When AD's missing games, you see him get injured. You see it. When Paul George missed games, you saw him get injured. KD, Curry, you saw them get injured, bro. There is no real questions. We did the same thing with Ben Simmons a few years back. We were questioning, like, oh, is he really hurt? His mentality, we're questioning it. Look at how many games this man done missed. He came back, played one game, they said he's still not ready. We may just have to accept the fact that that's the reality of these players. Like, I don't think that Ben Simmons wants to continue to miss games. Simmons is like on the last year of his contract or has one more year left. He needs to make another All-NBA team. He needs to prove that he can play at an all-star level. Him missing games isn't because, oh, he just trying to sit out and chill. Bro, this could be the last year of him in the NBA, if we be honest with ourselves. He may not ever receive another big contract unless he provides the evidence. So when he's missing games, it's because he legitimately might not be healthy. We now have incentives for players to play games, financial and with awards. And if they're still missing games, they may not just be healthy. healthy, bro. And so when we play this game about like, oh, are they this, that, XYZ? Nah, bro, like, I think some of these players are legit dealing with injury concerns. So the 65 game threshold that people having conversations about, when it comes to a lot of the awards, there were already unwritten rules in the media to where you roughly had to play around 65 games anyway to win the awards. We already broke it down. There's never really been a DPOY recipient or MVP recipient who didn't play roughly 65 games or more. Like, that just never happened outside of Bill Walton 1 year and like 2 examples of some DPOY recipients. But for the most part, you play that many amount of games. And when it comes to everything else, bro, all the incentives in the world and people are still missing games, I think that really shows like, no, like, bro, these players are just not healthy. And we have to accept the fact that Joel Embiid, and that should, in my opinion, that should be a much bigger talking point. That Joel Embiid at this point in his career, if he's still not available to play these games with the financial incentives, with the awards that are at stake, he can't make All-NBA, he can't win more MVPs, and he's still missing games. Ben Simmons needs an all-star, All-NBA caliber season so he can receive another big contract to convince a team to put him on a roster. He missed all those games, and he's still going to miss another game. He missed all that time, came back, played 1 game, he's out again. Man, same thing with Lonzo. How many games, like, Stephen A. Smith went back and forth with like, oh, I heard Lonzo, da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, bro, like, I hope the best for Lonzo. I really, really do. Lonzo has a player option after this season, bro. If Lonzo's missing these games, bro, he's legit hurt. I don't have to question it, bro. There's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars at stake on a year-to-year basis if these players don't play. I don't have to question if this nigga's hurt or not. He's on potentially the last year of his contract, and he hasn't played. He gonna opt into the player option because he wants to give himself another year. But if I'm running out of time within my contract to provide the evidence that I am really that good, so you can give me another big contract when I'm 26 years old, bro, I'm hurt. Stop questioning that. We giving them incentives. They still missing games. No, they really hurt. But yo, those are my thoughts. Let me know about it in the comment section below. Click the link down low. Peace.